Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third of our series of webinars conducted over the last 3 weeks. I am Surya Kannot, Associate Editor with ITLN. Our previous webinars have received a lot of attention and appreciation from our followers, and I'm glad to see a good number of attendees joining in today as well. We are streaming live on Facebook as well this time. A note to all the attendees, if you have any questions or observations to make, please do type it in the Q&A section down below or click the raise hand option. We will try to enable your audio so that you can pose your questions directly. Our theme for today's webinar is ensuring seamless delivery of essentials in the current crisis. We have entered day 31 of the nationwide lockdown, probably say about 9 days away from the second lockdown. Not sure if this is going to be the last one though. When the nationwide lockdown was announced to curb the spread of the coronavirus, citizens were assured that essential services, which includes groceries, milk, medicines, vegetables, fruits, and meat, would continue uninterrupted. Unfortunately, the reality has been far from different. The last couple of weeks, or probably the last month, has opened up a lot of gaps in the supply chain that need some fixing. I'm joined by my colleague Reggie John, editor at ITLN, and we'll be speaking to the members of the logistics fraternity on how the lockdown and related restrictions have adversely impacted the volumes for these players. Let me start with introducing our panel members here. Satyaki Raghunath, he is the Chief Strategy and Development Officer at Bangalore International Airport. He has almost 2 decades of experience in working with public and private sector investors and operators of aviation and transport infrastructure. Welcome, Satyaki. We have with us Dilip Kumar Sharma, Senior Vice President and Country Head of Operations, Ecom Express. Dilip has more than 25 years of experience in the logistics industry, spanning across e-commerce and traditional sectors. E-commerce Express is a leading end-to-end logistics solutions provider with reliable nationwide express deliveries. We also have with us Praharsh Chandra, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Shadowfax, the Uber of last mile deliveries and India's largest crowdsourced logistics platform. Under Praharsh's stewardship, the company has navigated through the logistics and hyperlocal landscape and has received several accolades such as the Niti Aayog's Champions of Change initiative. We also have Chakradhar Gare. He is the co-founder of Country Delight, an alumni of IIM Indore. He left his bright corporate career to solve a basic and prevalent problem, which is artificial and adulterated milk. His company, Country Delight, promises natural, fresh, and unadulterated milk directly to the doorstep of the consumer, leveraging on data and technology. And last but not the least, Sachin Haritash is the founder and CEO of Maven, which is a digital trucking company. Sachin is in charge of expanding the organization's footprint in India by steering the conceptualization and execution of key strategies related to management and operational needs of the company. After this round of introductions, let's head straight to the discussion. The last 1 month has been the most difficult time for the logistics industry, and this will only worsen unless there are some proactive measures taken to move essential goods and bring workers back to factories, farms, warehouses, and trucks. On that note, I throw the discussion open to the panelists here. I would like each of you to give us a sense of how the lockdown has taken a toll on your operations. Let me start with Satyaki.
Sure. Nice
Yeah,
to be
Satyaki.
here, Reggie and Surya.
Yeah.
And thank you for the opportunity. I think, from our perspective, as you know, we are an essential service and we continue to stay open during this period of the lockdown, which has been, I think, unprecedented, both from a industry perspective and globally. I don't think you've seen this degree of contraction, both in terms of demand as well as in supply, right? I've never seen it. I've been in the aviation industry for over 20 years and I've never seen this and I've never heard about something at this scale, short of during the two world wars in terms of this level of contraction. So I think from an Indian perspective, especially given what we do, I think in the early days it was a shock to the system. And we initially did have some challenges with respect to manpower and sort of getting, how and passenger operations, as you know, have been completely suspended, but our cargo operations and logistics operations are, going at the airport. So initially, we had some challenges with respect to manpower, and I would say that there were some local misconceptions in terms of safety of the airport staff and some general teething challenges. But I think I will say that even from a government perspective, both at the central government level as well as from a government of Karnataka perspective, and with the local police, everybody stepped in. I think they did a fantastic job of ensuring that the right level of support was given to essential services. And despite a lot of the criticism that you hear, right, for various arms of the government or the bureaucracy or public services like police and other support services, it, it's an exceptionally difficult job even for them. And I think they've gone out of their way to sort of listen to all of the stakeholders' requests to try and do what they can from their perspective in keeping the supply chains open and ensuring the movement of goods in a time that they also have to take adequate precautions, from the perspective of health and sort of safety. So I think they've done an incredible job in terms of helping us with passes, helping facilitate movement, helping get sort of labor to and from the cargo terminals, helping the supply chains, and making sure in coordination with DGCA and MOCA, the movement of cargo flights, for instance. And in fact, in the case of DGCA and MOCA, they've also taken some very, very interesting initiatives with respect to allowing passenger aircraft to be used for pure cargo flights. So even that, for instance, has never been done before, in most countries. That's something that's happened during these times. So in every respect, I think we've sort of made sure that those lines stay open. Having said all of that, we are probably operating today at between 25 and 35% of where we would normally operate. So during this period of the lockdown, we've done about 7,000 metric tons of cargo movement through the airport. In a typical month, we would have done somewhere between 30 and 35,000 metric tons. So that's of course sort of a very, that's a huge impact. And in our case, at this point, it's our only source of revenue. So it's a huge challenge. So for we get most of our revenues, for instance, from our passengers. And at a time like this, when we don't have any passenger operations, that's taken a toll. We're doing it. We have about 30 to 35% our strength. We are also sort of working very closely with our trade partners. We have about 80 partners besides the terminals. All of our other sort of supply chain and trade partners, we're working closely with them to help facilitate the goods. But I think having said all that, we've been able to effectively manage the movement of goods to and from sort of Bangalore airport. And I think we've no capacity challenges. We are moving goods pretty comfortably. Our cool port is open for the supply of essential goods, pharma, perishables, and a lot of that is. So I think from our perspective, I think we've had a pretty smooth operation. And on an average, between the terminals, about 100 metric tons is getting cleared every day. And I think in the course of the last week, we've seen a surge in there, and about 200 metric tons is getting cleared on a daily basis. So I think, given the compelling circumstances, unprecedented times, and the contraction everywhere, right? I think everybody has come together and done a pretty good job in terms of what has been possible. And I think we've learned a lot in the process as well. I mean, I think certainly if we had to do this again, I think a lot of our processes will be much more robust. We will be able to react much faster. And I expect us to sort of, do things in a much more streamlined way. So I think we've got a process working. we are working now closely even more with the sort of airline partners, the wider cargo and logistics community and trade partners to help facilitate this. I think the customs have been exceptional in terms of what they've done. The police has been very, very good, and all of the government officials have been very helpful. So I will say that.
It's like everything seems to be working fine at your
I
end.
don't know what, under the circumstances, it's very easy to criticize people. It's not been easy for anybody. And I think one of the things that we have to stop doing, especially from a media perspective, is point out, all of the flaws and the faults everywhere. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's not normal times, right? Everybody is expecting normal service in sort of abnormal times. And I think that's not fair. And I think everybody is really doing their bit and coming together to try and make things work. And we need to appreciate that.
Chakradhar, coming to you, yours is an essential service. When you're traveling, you're sending milk to every household. All operations are supposed to be functional at full potential. What has been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I resonate quite a bit with what Satyaki has mentioned. Milk and all other essential services from the panel here, whoever are functioning here. I think the government has done an incredible job in supporting, us businesses like ours. And, especially talking about milk historically also, right from the emergency to whenever there was civil unrest or any point of time, the entire government infrastructure has been used to protect essential services. And that has continued. And, it is more credit to the government than any of the individual businesses here that have played a very pivotal role in our ability to function as a business. That said, my team has done an incredible job, and stood up to the test of time. Did two things which, I think which come to my mind, which, I think made this happen. One is, as a business, we are a very, very customer centric and a customer obsessed organization. The fact of not giving milk to customers even one day hurts us a lot. It beyond the monetary loss of things, it just like feels very, very dejecting and depressing to have something like that on our heads. So that sort of a feeling has been built as a culture in our organization through many years, and I think that's been a very big part, played a very big part in the initial days, first 2 3 days of the lockdown, where everyone had to overcome their fears and come out there and tolerate the uncertainty and stand up there and serving, doing their job. That has been a very big part. And secondly, we as a business are in the business of milk, and historically also we work 24/7, 365. That's the way of life for us. So that has also played an important role in us doing our jobs out there. And and coming to difficulties, at least like I said, at least on the sourcing and the production point of view, visually also, if you see a milk tanker or anything like that, the police and everybody is trained to think that this is an essential services and it should be functioning. But where we have had some problems is in the last mile, especially in the initial days. There, again, constant communication with our teams at the ground level, obsessive focus on resolving individual problems of people. So if there is someone caught and like put up at a police station, you speak with the person personally, you speak with the SHO personally, you get involved, solve the problems at the local level. Only if they're not getting solved at a local level, then you go higher up, because the higher ups are swamped with things. Like every DM, every commissioner is swamped with thousands of things, and they must be working 18 hours a day. They have like equally tough job to do. And I think they deserve more appreciation and admiration than any of us, even for that matter. And so you try to resolve your problem by not bothering the people who are clogged with bandwidth, and try to resolve things locally. That's helped us tremendously. That's a very valuable input that I'm sure it might help people who are starting their businesses out of the lockdown as well. Then constant communication with the workforce. We've insured all our last mile and the plant personnel to the extent of a 1 lakh rupee COVID insurance. We've insured some of them with family insurances, wherever possible. But although we were not able to get the right insurances, otherwise we would have done that as well. these are some of the things that we have done. And now the new set of problems which we are tackling, which I also would love to, understand from my fellow colleagues here, is, now this is a reality, and the COVID is spreading, and I'm not even sure whether it's a question of when it will stop. It is a question of how we will be tackling this going forward. Would love to understand what measures people are taking to at an employee level and at a consumer level to prevent this, and what all we can do. I'm also happy to share what my learnings are as well.
Coming to Praharsh, so obviously with e-commerce limited to just delivering essential goods, it must have taken a huge impact on your volumes. So what are some of the gaps or challenges that still exist in your system?
Right, so I'll just make a small correction. So we're a B2B cross-category logistics platform. So what ends up happening is that we cater to food, grocery, pharmaceuticals, and e-commerce. So as you can imagine, the first three of those four categories were hitting somewhat their peaks that you would expect in any kind of a lockdown that would happen, right? So each of those verticals have behaved kind of slightly differently, right? So you had grocery, which we were in immediately after the lockdown, we saw almost 4 to 5 times of jump in overall volumes that we needed to cater to. Same was the case with pharmaceutical side of our business. Food had a varying curve. I guess that was also because of various media reports, etc., coming in on delivery boys. And that's bound to happen because of so much confusion existing as to how you need to be doing stuff. But food was impacted, but perhaps a little less impacted compared to the overall impact that you yourself have mentioned that e-commerce had. So net, I think when I look at our overall business, luckily for us, because of the cross-category play, impact was limited. And we do expect a large part of it to come back. The larger issue was probably more to meet the immense demand that had started coming in few of the verticals, and to kind of reallocate all the resources we had and focus all our energies on things which was most important to do. I think the first week was a learning phase for most of the entities involved across all of these, our internal organization and also external elements such as the government, the local police, etc., etc. So large part of first week kind of went into organizing it across the 5,000 pin codes we are present in. And I must say that, of course, first week, it's bound to be confusion. You put 1.3 billion people on a lockdown. You can't expect everyone to understand how to operate on a new lineup starting tomorrow. But I think people were receptive to understanding what to do. I think we personally visited a lot of DCP and police gatherings wherein they wanted to have chats and communication on how to resolve a lot of these things. So I guess across most of our verticals, aspects are fairly clear. There is now that the demand has also started to kind of come to some sort of a normal, which is still higher by 2 to 3 times in the verticals that I'm talking about. But we've been able to pull in resources from other verticals to ensure that all of the supply chain doesn't get really impacted. And we're actually trying to support more and more companies working in these segments to make that happen. The government on their end has also, across most of the zones, gotten a hang of how to actually operate and tackle the various fleets of light commercial vehicles to delivery boys who are moving from place to place. So you would go out on street today and you would observe that they're much more kinder to the staff than probably in the first 2 to 3 days of the lockdown. So that has been a change. Of course, one of the challenges so far is the current scenario is concerned is that things keep on changing quite a bit. So we had this e-commerce restart that was about to happen on 28th, 21st, and that kind of got delayed back again, which is fair. I guess in the grander scheme of things, everyone's thought processes need to be taken care of. But I guess a bit of clarity there moving forward would help, because you end up spending a lot of resources to actually plan for restarting some of those lines. So that bit of clarity mismatch is there. And of course, a lot of these zones sometimes tend to go into that red category, right, wherein you cannot really be moving in and out of the facility. So that's been a trick to manage and actually guide our staff as well to not be traveling to particular areas. I think one of the great things that has happened in this whole story is that that the role of technology, and I think we might be covering it as part of some other subtopics, has been pretty immense. So actually telling a delivery partner fleet as to where to go, where not to go, sharing local passes on their mobile phones so that they don't need to be carrying some paperwork, right? You can just do that. And in fact, I've been pretty surprised and pleasantly so that in the government has taken a lot of technologically interesting steps from the Arogya Setu app to a lot of the e-passes that have come across. I think in Bangalore, we have digital passes which you can scan, and all of our fleet also has that. So you are sure about which person is traveling, which person is authorized to travel. So a lot of good stuff and innovation has happened, and I'm expecting a lot of that to continue in the coming few days as well. So let's see. I think while the lockdown might not completely end post third, but I'm expecting there to be some more ease of doing business in the e-commerce segment per se. So waiting for that. Let's see.
We have Dilip who has joined us on the phone. Dilip, can you share your experiences?
Hey, hi, good morning to everybody.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me here. Yeah, sure. So on the first part, let's see, I will cover it into two parts. One as to how has been the initiative of government and how does it look like now, and then basis those directions and input, how some of the solutions that people like us have done. So on the first part, on the government initiatives, which was your first question part, I think there's enough and more precautions that the government has done with all kinds of lever as an input to say, okay, what the shutdown means in terms of logistics, in terms of items which are necessary, which is opened as of now, to items which are not necessary and is restricted. Has it done goodness to overall health scenario? To a very, very large extent, yes. Is it making supply chain bit dull and putting too much of a stress on the cost and other part? It's taking a big toll. Now, having said so, not only us, the entire industry is going through that pain, and that pain is worth living in terms of the risks that we have in hand. Coming back to the second part, as to how are we tackling it up and what are some of the stuff that we thought we will do into it. As you would know, Ecom Express, which is a fully B2C logistics company, we provide services to only e-commerce companies and e-commerce need. We do not do anything which is B2B type of a stuff in any market. So from there, while this lockdown happened, we to give you some numbers, we deal with around 35,000 field workforce, which became idle at that given point of time. And then the quick lever was, how do you resolve which was open? And what was open was essential, which means there were lots of queries to do groceries. There were lots of queries to fulfill essentials. We do manage some fulfillment also of some of those grocery partners. So what we did was we quickly went to the drawing board, did as to what is that intra-city demand that we can do, went to government, took necessary approvals in various cities that we have, and very quickly we opened to around 35 key cities where the demand was being asked for, and started servicing that. So to tell you that around out of 35 cities that we opened up, we started on the very first day of demand of close to around 28 cities on both essentials and groceries. And we built upon thereafter on lots of technology input to say what is that we would do as a hygiene to check upon if the delivery boys are infected, not infected, those precautions which government did mandate us to do into the warehousing. So we went into those aspects of measuring the temperature, putting the hygiene on social distancing, and then putting the outscan to delivery into me or your houses. So those were the steps that we took. Having said so, that only contributes only a minuscule of the volume, while demand did surge in the first week. It was 5 times, 10 times the demand that you would expect. And then finally, the graph has come back to somewhat a business as normal. And I would hope that that was forecasted, because while the lockdown happened, people in panic was buying too much. And now since this has been a phase of life, the demand has eased out to a large extent. So that was part one of the schedule as of now. Part two of the lockdown, while it started, there was some mandate given by government to open up non-essentials, which again was retrieved back. But it also said that the transportation of vehicles from a place A to B, any part of the country, is possible. So far, so it is essential. One. Two, it also said that vehicle anywhere in the country, if it is into an onward journey or for a destination journey, that was allowed. Part three, any kind of material which was held in transit was also allowed. So we could retrieve lots of those held up inventory in between in all the phases, be it first mile, mid mile, last mile type, and we could offload all those inventories. Now that has led to a challenge now as to the demand which was in pipeline pre-lockdown to the demand which was in transit is within the lockdown. There's a huge inventory pending. You cannot deliver is the challenge one unless and until it gets opened up, because still the mandate is that you would deliver only essential. Non-essential is still not allowed. There's a huge pile of inventory there. Second part of the problem, I think it's worth mentioning here, is of the 35,000 workforce that I was mentioning earlier, and you can divide portion of that manforce as your driver handlers, and thereafter the workforce which is into the last mile or into the warehouse. Around 30 to 35% of them have migrated to their natives in the time frame before the lockdown, whichever was possibility, they have migrated. The rest are divided into two parts. One, many of them are into the red zones, which is declared by the government, so you can't absorb them. And third, they are there, but in absence of the volume, you don't get a permission till non-essential is up and running. So this entire force is idle at this one point of time. While it opens up, if you want me to cover that, I will cover that in around maybe a minute or so. While we open up, some of the challenges and opportunities which is in hand is that the demand in that case, in our estimate, will surge to maybe 1.52x. So there's sorts of inventory pending at the bank portals to try and release this inventory. At a logistics end, we need to plan to clear two things. One, all pipeline inventory, how do you return back as an RTO or back to delivery? Two, how do you get the workforce onto your attachment so that that demand could be met? This is a larger challenge, because those 30-35% of the workforce which have migrated to their native, unless and until things get normal, they would take time to come back and return. The demand all of a sudden, since it will surge, everybody would look for manpower. So there is a cost element which will surge, there is a demand which will be high, and the supply of manpower and capacity which will be less. So these three parts of the problem is post-normalization is where we need to handle. Technology, if I need to cover some more on the part, life from here to normalcy for this year and years ahead would be very different than what we foresee. For example, any of us now taking an order will be very careful that is the guy who is delivering is infected or not. So at the back end, there has to be lots of technology lever to ensure that how do you onboard a guy, how do you take care of that workforce which is working with you, how do you take care of hygiene, and how do you pass that message to a consumer to say, hey, your delivery is going and it's free of any infections, right? Or it's a healthy delivery. Is where the technology backend we have started working upon. Part two, social distancing, in my view, will become norm of life of many years from here. So business will get completely reset in the way that we look at. Social distancing will become a norm and hygiene for all businesses ahead. And hence that input as to how do you consume now a design structure into your warehouse, a design structure into a large part of a workforce gathering, all right? And those will also enable a reset into both onboarding and deliverable mechanism. Part three would be, in this case, how does the vendor partner or the retailers or so-called sellers who are dealing with portals, how do they engage? And say, to give you all a simple example, say if customer A has been promoting lots of Kirana, which is a mandate and has worked well, how do you take care of Kirana into these models? How do you take care of outsourced manpower into these models? I think these are the stuff which will be requiring lots of work ahead to see as to how do we translate into a health hygiene based factor on the mandates that we have now to the mandates which will now get revisited time and again to arrive upon a better infrastructure or a new infrastructure, not better, I would say a new infrastructure or a new way of life or a new way of logistics life ahead for the year.
Okay. Thanks, Dilip. We'll come back to you on this. Sachin, what about you? Do you see a big gap between demand and supply and logistics at the moment? For you?
As a Maven organizer, we are a completely digital tracking company with no offices across India. We are completely paperless, faceless, and are digital. So this COVID is for us is a blessing in disguise. The way the Paytm got opportunity during the demonetization. During this short span of time, we got the 3x volumes because we are completely paperless and digital. As all analysts has said that the business scenario will change in coming time, and that what we have started seeing that people started copying Maven the way we work and operate. We are the first one in a full truck business to provide services in India. So we were the first one to approach to HUL that we will be providing the services, and how we would be able to provide services is because a small truck owners who are the drivers cup owners are the real heroes, because for them the trucks are their lives. So that's livelihood and their life. So why they are able to sustain in this ecosystem is because the entrepreneurship which they have. They are able to manage their vehicles, repairs, they carry their stoves and other materials to make food, and they have the money to spend on. So during this time, as I'm the part of founding member of FICCI National Logistic Committee, I'm in a core committee of AIMTC, ITWA, all the association, and we represented to Government of India, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Department of Logistics, that how these vehicles will be brought to the empty vehicles brought to the warehouse initially. So I propose that we should have a letter on which they will be mentioning the vehicle number will be coming empty from a destination to fulfillment center or to a manufacturing facility. And HUL has taken these suggestions very seriously and presented to the Ministry of Commerce, and they got the approval. And after that, you see that 27th, we started first shipment from HUL with this process. And since then, we have not seen any process, any hitch, any problem during end transit and route. As of now, support system by the government is reasonably very good, because the problem is so big, so we cannot pinpoint specific things. But on and large, by looking at the demand, which is right now, and the supply side, both are reasonably good. First week, definitely there are some problem. After that, it has come down. The freights has come down now, reasonably good. For us, I think that we don't see any problem. It's being an entrepreneur, being a leadership, we have to see that how it can be encashed by changing our business model quickly to adapt these kind of situations. And as Mr. Dilip has also said, that it is not going to over right now. It will take many months or a year also. So as early as possible, people have to move, and even the logistic leaders has to redesign their supply chain processes also. So from my side, government has done reasonably very good, taken reasonable steps. What are the initiatives we have proposed to ministry, like EV bill extension, they have taken very quick. In 2 days, they have come up with the amendments. The highway dhabas, we propose that highway dhabas should be open, repair shop should be open. They have come up with the notification gadgets very quick. In day or in 2 days, they have resolved our problems. The only challenge is bringing the drivers from their hometowns. So obviously, everybody is concerned about their life, and it is so infectionable disease. So we also cannot take risk by bringing. Otherwise, if government permit, we can bring even 200, 300 drivers in a day from villages by sending the buses. So that much resources are available, and government has supported Mahindra has supported that they will be also sending. Ashok Leyland has come up forward that we will provide you all those things. So we don't see any challenges, but the problem, the disease is so big, so we cannot take a risk of people. So business can be earned tomorrow, but lives cannot be brought back. So we have to be very cautious in expanding, in growing. So step by step, government is taking very reasonably good initiative steps by opening slow and steady. I think that is the way forward.
So post this lockdown, this question is to Satyaki. Do you think that the e-commerce sector will get a shot in the arm, thus increasing air cargo capacity? Because there'll be a new normal now with customers shopping online more often than choosing brick and mortar stores for placing, orders. So do you think this could really pump up volume? I mean, the air cargo capacity?
Yeah, I certainly think there's huge potential, and this is one of the key areas where cargo and logistics is going to see a spurt, especially over the next, I would say, 12 to 24 months. We are already seeing a huge sort of uptick in terms of what's happening with respect to e-commerce, and that trend was there even before the sort of COVID crisis. I mean, over the last 12 months, I think we've seen an appreciable increase in both the demand as well as supply of service on the e-commerce side. I think from our perspective, I think we think that more and more people will sort of transition through this period of uncertainty and isolation with the view that, e-commerce and fulfillment of those e-commerce services, especially on the B2C side and B2B2C, I suppose, will be delivered through e-commerce more than anything else. And I certainly see that trend increasing. From our perspective, people, what they're buying, how they're buying, how it's sort of getting fulfilled, that's going to be key. The ability of the air cargo industry and the supply chain sort of the stakeholders underpinning the entire air cargo sector is also going to be very critical with respect to how you can fulfill these things. I think that's very, very important. I think for the present we have essential needs, and I think as the lockdown sort of starts easing, you will find that some other sectors also come in through that. And I think, as that happens, digital transformation, as everybody's been talking about, I think COVID has done more for digital transformation than almost any other internal initiative in most companies. More and more people have sort of been using digital as a way of doing business, as a way of, it's now become a way of life. And I think all of us are getting much more used to how we use technology and digital in order to service the e-commerce and, the sector. So I think from those perspectives, undoubtedly so. Even from our own sort of the way we're rethinking the cargo business and the way we're rethinking our own sort of supply chains has been driven in a huge part with respect to how data is going to sort of drive the value chain. And every one of our initiatives through BIAL, whether it's on the cargo business side or even sort of a wider business, I think the view of what's going to happen is going to be shaped in a large part by looking at trends, looking at data, and how we can use that to actually make some decisions which are actionable and have outcomes, rather than the way we used to look at it earlier, which was just sort of, it tells us something and therefore it's used for reporting. And I think moving away from reporting to driving decision making is going to be one of the biggest things that data and e-commerce are going to do for us. In addition, I think the digital just as the Digital India initiative demonetization did things for Indian consumers towards this, and I think somebody earlier spoke about this. I can't remember in talking about what I think it was. Haritash, I think he was talking about the fact that in their sector, for instance, COVID has done a 3x jump in terms of what it's done for sort of the business. And I think for many of us, it's going to do those things with the way consumer behavior and transactions are going to change. I think we will see a huge uptick on e-commerce. And I made some notes here from an airport perspective, right? Preventive health and wellness products, for instance, PPE and things like that, healthcare, groceries and household essentials. And also a lot of the electronic goods. I mean, in the last month, we've seen a huge upsurge, for instance, even on imports with respect to what's happening with computers, peripherals, all of those things. Now, whether that's a one-off and everybody just sort of reacting to the COVID crisis and working from home, or whether that's going to be a trend that we're going to see more of as more and more offices and businesses sort of start working from home. I think that's something that we have to wait and watch. But the fact that e-commerce and is going to play a pivotal part in our growth journey, I think is unquestioned. And I think at this point, I'd also like to say that a lot of our employees who otherwise were potentially reluctant to embrace some of these things have also embraced it with a huge amount of enthusiasm. And the fact that it's made their ability to work almost seamless even from home, or when they come into office and when they need to, in order to provide these essential services, has been quite exceptional. And both our ICT teams and our cargo teams who are working on a daily basis have done an exceptional job of providing that ability to fulfill many of the needs of the airport community here, our wider sort of stakeholders. And I think that's also something that has come as a very, very positive sort of surprise for all of us. We think that trend will also grow.
We have a lot of questions coming in from our attendees here. Should we just open it to them? I think it would be better if we have questions from their end, which they would want answers to. Chetan, can we have Renu Parmar? Chetan, can you enable audio for Renu Parmar? Okay, so I think she's posed her question here. Do you expect supply of essentials to dry up if there's no further opening up of, and why are the freight rates so high? And how can they be reduced?
Who's the question to, Surya?
She has posted to all panelists. I think you can take it, Satyaki.
Just a clarification before. I think that's a question coming from Renu Singh Parmar. She was the previous economic advisor to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. She's been a quite regular at all our webinars. So, of course, one of the concern is the higher freight rate. I don't think Satyaki is in the right position to answer that. But if anyone would want to, like, for example, to attempt that question, because I think there's mismatch of supply and demand and capacity crunch. So if there is any perspective, I think that we could address that question. Yeah, go ahead,
Sachin. Yeah. So the prices, if you talk about the demand and supply, initially the prices has increased by 300% to 400% in the first 10 days, and that mellowed down to now, and many places where we are working on a long-term contract, since day one we are able to manage the cost. So we have supplied to all our customers on the same price. And recently we have seen that as the demand has gone down, because initially days people have pre-buy, now the demand is less, the vehicle availability is reasonably good on longer routes and even in shorter routes. So we don't see that there will be any shortages of supply side. So we are fully prepared to take the volumes, and as more opening up of the manufacturing facilities, more truckers will be coming up and starting their operations, as more regulations are being now clear to operators to get the approvals from the government. So I don't see that there will be any much increase in prices or supply side.
Just to add, Surya, to that question, I think the person asking the question was also wanted to understand whether the essentials supply assets are drying up. So my perspective here is that the production, I think, of course, was impacted in the initial few days. And I'm speaking from a perspective of the clients we work with, who are across FMCGs. A few of them are in food. A few of them are in grocery supply, right? So most of them would probably concur to the fact that they face some issue in production in the first 2-3 days, but they've been able to get a lot of that back up and running so far as the present scenario is concerned. Now, the inventory was supposed to anyways help us see through the first 14, 20, 30 days, because various people across the supply chain keep inventory in various sets of stocking levels. I think the challenge was more not of stock out, but it was more of getting the products where they needed to be. So in more often than not, you would find one variety of some particular product, but the other variety may not be present. So I guess what might happen more frequently is that you might not get complete SKUs that you want on your shelf. But from my perspective, at least, and from the clients we're working with, it will get better as we go along. And especially after this, the new set of ease of rules that was announced in the phase 2 of the lockdown, I think several industries have been able to get a lot of stuff up and running. And of course, it's all going to be gradual. It's not going to be suddenly in the peak state as we used to be before it. But my sense is that so far as the dry up is concerned, no, that should not happen. We have sufficient stock across most companies of most essentials that are needed. And as the regulations ease down, it will become easier and easier for people to actually get them where they're supposed to be as well. The point on direct to customer is pretty interesting because even if they might not be there in your local Kirana shelf, and I think, or your supermarket shelf, they might be there online on online platforms wherein you should be able to get it, if not on a same day sort of turnaround time, you might be able to get it on a 2 to 3 day sort of a TAT level. So basis that, I think we should be able to deal with it. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised by the way in which the whole logistics community has actually come in together to make a lot of these things work. We've been getting inquiries from a lot of vendors across, from your heavy truckers to small truckers who've been asking to move essentials since they don't have sufficient business in their own areas, right? So they've been willing to come in. So of course, freight costs went up on a temporary basis, but as and when you're able to at least start filling the trucks again, you're able to bring the cost down to some extent. So I think the cost should take a positive trajectory as people start to compile again, as at least some elements of the business start working out a bit better. The other thing that's also happening is that, and that's also a positive thing, is that a lot of people in the supply chain are willing to take cuts in the overall profits they would have made. I think if you have a fair conversation, I think we've been running supply chain for governments across states for free to get food to migrant laborers. We've been moving tons of food on a daily basis. I've seen many more people also come up to move our products, for example, or from an intercity perspective, on a as-is rate or a rate which makes sense. So I think the direction from where I see it was 1 week back and to where it is today is positive, and a dry up situation should not be something we should be worrying about, but rather I think it's something we can actively be helping to improve faster sooner rather than later.
Let me get Chakradhar in here. Prior to the lockdown, how many liters of milk or milk products were you selling, Chakradhar? And what's the kind of surge in demand that you have witnessed during this period?
We've seen around roughly overall surge in demand to the extent of 40%, roughly. So what happened was during the initial days of the lockdown, we've received nearly 100% surge in orders. But we have taken a conscious choice of just serving our existing customers for the first 4 to 5 days, and then took the new orders later on. So overall, what happened was we could service around 50% of the new inquiries that came in. But one thing that we've done is, even on the worst case of the lockdown days, we've served nearly 93% of our customers, and all the remaining days we serve above 99.5% of our customers. So this is again like something which we have done by actively communicating with the customers, with the delivery partners, as well as with our back-end production teams. So like, for example, some of the things that we've done is we work from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Our delivery partners typically work, that is the work timing. So we've moved that from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. so that, the same person can work 3x more and accommodate for the 10 to 12% people who have not attended due to their personal health reasons or migration related effects.
Okay. Also on the, has there been any sharp rise in milk adulteration, which I've been reading reports on adulteration of milk. So how are you dealing with that aspect?
No, actually, it's been a little difficult for the milk industry from a farmer point of view, because see, there is a 10 to 15% HoReCa demand in each of these big cities. HoReCa is hotels, restaurants, and canteens and caterers. So this demand has gotten completely wiped off. and even a lot of the unorganized sector, which is your typical milkman or the typical people who have direct B2B contracts, they've all been shut down. So because of that, there was a lot of milk getting left out at the farmer level, due to which, our raw material prices have fallen by 35% to 40%. That has been a problem from a farmer point of view, and people were more worried about just getting their existing milk sold rather than, adulteration and all these things. So at least we've seen and the way our business is designed, we fundamentally take milk directly from the farmer. So there is no, and we monitor it real time right at the source. So there is no scope of adulteration in our product either way. But, one thing that at least, which we've seen is that because of the supply chain breakage for many of these milk businesses and B2B businesses, farmers have had problems. And now day by day things are improving, and, like things are settling down. And, but, there is no worry on adulteration per se as a point of view from a farmer side. And the second thing I would like to share is, by definition, food does not transmit COVID, and the way we process it's a fully automated process. So, and we are worried that, with the spread and not stopping despite all the efforts, and, as we move towards a new normal, what we can do best to protect the health of our consumers and delivery partners is primarily to ensure 100% contactless delivery, since our products are automatically manufactured, and so there is no risk from a product point of view, and the only risk can be from a delivery point of view. And we ensure 100% contactless delivery with the customers. We've stopped collecting money from customers, just to ensure the safety of our customers and delivery partners. And we're taking this very seriously. And apart from that, integrating and trying to work with the Arogya Setu app and all. And so the idea is like primarily to avoid complete contact and keep it completely digital with the customer, and we anyway manufacture products in an automatic fashion. So the spread of COVID should not happen through us, at least as responsible businesses.
Reggie has a question for you.
I have a couple of questions to all of you who wishes to answer. The first one is related to the coronavirus, COVID-19. Just 2 days back, we had the news about one of the employees or one of the officers who walked into the Ministry of Civil Aviation actually turned positive, for example. The entire Ministry of Civil Aviation office can be have asked to kind of go on quarantine. What kind of preparations have you taken? Because your employees are actually out in the open, for example. Along with the COVID crisis as a pandemic, there is also a lot of social ostracization that happens, for example. Satyaki, you would agree with me, because Bangalore airport, actually a lot of the employees who worked in the cargo terminals and the airport, they faced a certain problem in the housing societies they lived in. What kind of preparation do you have? Because God forbid, if there is something goes wrong, for example, if you have one of your employees turned positive, you have entire contact list being generated, then it actually going to affect a significant area of operation. What kind of preparation do you have ready now? So I think you can go ahead and then we can quickly get into the other side.
So Reggie, I think that's a very good question, and something that we've been debating sort of since the beginning of this, when coronavirus first came into the news. And I think we started off very early in terms of making sure that we took the right sort of precautions. So well before the lockdown happened, right, we had protocols and processes in place, and we had an incredibly committed sort of risk management and business continuity team that looks at a range of scenarios that could affect our business. And I think for the last 2 or 3 years, they've been at the forefront of developing the ACI manual, even for instance, with respect to risk and business continuity. And as soon as this started, they've been working very closely with internal departments as well as with government agencies to look at what sort of eventualities might arise with respect to, say, for instance, a potential outbreak in the terminal, or a potential outbreak at one of our offices, a potential outbreak at one of the cargo facilities, or even we're in the midst of a very large expansion program, as you know, with the delivery of our new runway a few months ago, and then now the terminal and things like that. So even within the construction sites and things like that. And I think we put in a huge process mapping in place in terms of making sure that, there's strict containment, health screening on a daily basis. All of us are temperature screened. All of us sort of go through checks on a daily basis. Anybody who comes into the buildings are wearing a mask. In fact, only for the purpose of this conversation, for instance, am I not wearing a mask? Even though I'm sitting in the office, I normally wear a mask every time I sort of step into the office. Physical distancing in all of our sort of premises. We've taken this time also to now go into the terminals and every one of our public facilities to sort of think about how each of these spaces need to be rethought when operations resume. And I think with respect to the other point that you raised earlier in terms of our personnel facing some of the ostracization issues and things like that, I think that was there at the beginning. And I think a lot of it is also, due to the fact that people panic in times of crisis. It's human nature to panic. So I think a lot of people in a lot of societies panicked with respect to the fact that people are going to the airport and coming back, were they in danger, were their families in danger and things like that. And I think these reactions are bound to happen in most communities. But I will say that two things. One, the government of Karnataka and the police stepped in very, very effectively when we brought this to their notice. And they went with us, sort of took charge of sort of making sure that they put out proactive measures. They sort of helped quell the sort of, they stepped in and advised various people. They worked with housing societies. We and our management team did a lot of work with sort of the housing societies across Bangalore. We worked with district collectors in many of these districts in and around Bangalore to sort of explain why we were performing essential service, why it was very critical for the operation to continue, and how, not just personnel of the airport, but personnel of the entire aviation ecosystem were really frontline warriors as far as the COVID crisis was concerned. And the fact that they really shouldn't be discriminated against or ostracized. And I think I will say that over the course of the last 3 weeks, things have improved tremendously. Even the local villagers, for instance, who were earlier sort of very nervous about the fact that people were passing through their villages, or there were people in their villages who were working at the airport, who they thought originally could have been a potential hazard. All of them have come together in very, very collaborative ways to make sure that the operation has been functioning as smoothly and seamlessly as possible. And, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, honestly, who's been involved, whether it's within the airport community, our employees, our stakeholders, and the wider sort of airport fraternity, airlines, ground handling companies, everybody, right? Cargo terminal operators, as well as everybody, not just in the government agencies at MOCA and GOK level, but even at the district administration level here at the villages surrounding the tehsildars, the municipal authorities and things like that. Everybody has really come together. And I'm sure if you ask my fellow panelists, they will say that the very reason why you have sort of essential services, supplies, and most goods working is because of the fact that everybody has, really collaborated and sort of moved towards helping India survive this. And I think it's a great example of all of the positive work also that comes through. I mean, we do a lot of, like I said earlier in this conversation, everybody talks about, criticizing various people, but I think there's a huge amount of hard work that's gone in through sort of hidden communities of workers who don't even get talked about. Even we do 12,000 meals a day. We do groceries for villagers and things like that. And even that project, for it to take off, for it to sort of be able to be effective with all of our partners. All of the airport partners, by the way, came together to do this Namma Chetana food initiative, which we are doing for communities in and around Bangalore. And I think that's been exceptional too. And without the help of everybody, we couldn't have done it. So I will reiterate the fact that, thank you. I mean, all of India, right, I think should be thanked also for all of the positive efforts that people have taken and the great stories that are coming out of how people have really come together to help each other. And I think we need to do more about talking about how we've done this as a country. Not enough gets said about this.
I completely agree. I think it's a big salute to a number of logistic industry stakeholders, employees, members of a fraternity out in the open. It's a big salute to them. Praharsh, you want to come in just to understand in terms of what kind of preparation do you have?
Yep. So I think a lot of the physical infrastructure aspects that Satyaki mentioned are aspects which we are also replicating for our facilities. But I guess what I will do is I'll cover a lot of the digital initiatives that we've been taking, because a large part of our fleet is actually on ground. They don't really hit any particular facility, but they have to go either from a retail shop to another retail shop or from a customer to customer. So maybe I'll just cover some of the aspects that we're doing which are fairly interesting. So of course, the app that we have that needs to track health and compliance metrics on a 100% basis, right? So there are selfies that people have to take on a daily basis. It's a mandatory act. You have to just click your picture. You have to show that you had a hand sanitizer, you had a face mask, and you, of course, are in your shirt, so that the police authorities can identify you that you are an essentials delivery service provider. So that's one thing which is there and mandatory in case that self-compliance is not there, because it also asks for your temperature. And in case that is not there, of course, there is a quarantine procedure, and next steps then take their own course. The other aspect, I think it was mentioned by one of the fellow panelists, was on contactless delivery. So it's another interesting aspect wherein, either at the retailer or at the customer doorstep, especially if the customer has asked for it, we try to do it for almost all of the shipments. The idea is to drop the shipment at any particular surface wherein you can keep it. The boy takes the picture of the product just for verification purposes, and then you kind of go back, right? The third thing I think the team is working on, and that is something which is recent, is that I think once we come out of the whole lockdown phase, there will be a phased easing up of restrictions. So you would have zones wherein you can or cannot go. Now, information on that is very, very important. And that is something that the team is focusing on. We plan to do a lot around it. You wouldn't want your staff to be moving around areas which are probably not authorized by the government to go in. And hence, since it's a platform, you can actually control people's movement as well. So you'll be kind of controlling orders, etc., that we in and out from those particular facilities, sort of saying. Communication and training has been key. I think there are a large number of daily calls, training modules that team always takes up. In case anything does happen, the team has been able to put together a online consultation and a phone consultation with doctors that can help them guide against their particular symptoms. I would kind of end this by adding one interesting aspect of what we are doing as well. So government has come up with this app called Arogya Setu. I guess all of us would know about it. It actually tells the risk assessment and profile of every individual, and it uses a lot of intriguing data points to actually arrive at that. And a lot of the people who actually get infected, their history gets accessed, and then you can have various levels of danger. They're opening it up for people to actually consume and utilize for their day-to-day operations. That is one thing which we're actively trying to integrate. If we can get information on any device which might have any risk of having been in contact with the person who potentially was in a secondary degree contact level with any person who did have COVID, that is something which we can take an action on and help out. So those are, of course, actions from a digital standpoint, and then of course there are a series of measures you have to take from a safety and well-being perspective, because it's a difficult job for all the people who come on ground on a daily basis and meet so many people. We've tried to cover them from an insurance perspective. Of course, there is a fund that we've set up for all the folks who are associated with us, but beyond in the community as well. Those are some of the broader aspects, but yes, specifically speaking from a COVID perspective and a digital solutioning perspective, these are some of the things that at least we have been working on and still keep working on as things progress.
Maybe Sajin, Chakradhar, and Dilip, if you want to quickly comment on this, and then we can open up the to the question and answer session with from participants. Dilip, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So let me cover that up. Some of the aspects at this one point of time, we have taken some preemptive measures to start with, which is as below. One, creating a COVID kit. What does it mean when we say COVID kit? We're preparing as per the PPE requirements or as per the guidelines to fellow colleagues or in our offices that we do, or the fellow delivery boys that we have as an employee who delivers on our behalf. For them, either be it a thermometer or a mask or a sanitizer, what we're trying to do is, first initiative is to create a COVID kit for all our employees. Who is into the field or who is a large part of geography. You would know that we deliver to the largest pin codes in the country. We covered around 25,000 odd pin codes across the country. So it's quite vulnerable that the kind of people that you deal with is very spread out. And hence this idea of getting the COVID kit installed in each of the boys' delivery bag. So that's step one, that we would provide the COVID kit to each of our pickup or delivery boys in terms of it consists of the basic hygiene as mandated by the government as some initiative by us. Part two, as it was mentioned a while back, the Arogya app, we are trying to see as to how do we integrate, take that information with us and pass on the information. Arogya app, as of now, it's a voluntary disclosure of information saying, am I infected, am I not infected? That data, as of now, is not shared with anybody outside the world. It's trying to see if we can integrate, likewise, what Praharsh mentioned, that if we can integrate, that will make an intelligent piece while we try the initiatives in. Third, on the technology out front, trying to see that while we maintain these two hygiene, how do you pass on to a customer? So on a outscan of a shipment, a SMS goes to you saying that the person who is coming to deliver a shipment to you is temperature from that perspective, he is into a hygienic part of the temperature, which is risk-free. He is hygiene or checked by us, so you will be risk-free that he is not infected. Having said so, a background check at the office, which is the preparedness on the ground, that any person entering the office, be it our own office of corporate or be it our work office in field or be it our procurement center across the country, the norms is getting reset, and it's a new norm that how do you transport a person to start with, for example, in a bus. Earlier, a 32-seater, etc., would have so many people fit in. Now, the social distancing part into the bus also complies. So you might have one person distancing the second seat, etc., and hence your capacity goes. So cost is moving up while you're programming up those. And I'm just giving some small examples as to how the programs will influence the cost to how you will come back to initiatives of these hygiene. So these is the starting hygiene. While you come into the centers, you have security guards. So first, how do you make a hygienic input and inward for them? The temperature-controlled environment in terms of where they themselves get checked, if they are carrying a temperature, if they have to go to the sanity, and then the workforce inside the starting stage. While we do so, the entire activity will get captured through our systems that we are trying to make up, that how many people have been sanitized today, how many people are having a temperature, say 99 and above, and what are we doing above that? Can we pass that information back to government? Can we pass the information back to hospital? Can we take care of ourselves in the insurance that we have or the fund like what was mentioned? Can we take care of them? All those modalities are getting worked upon to ensure that what is the new normal life of working tomorrow. These are some of the steps that we are taking on threefold. One, to take care of ourselves as a responsible company in the supply chain. Two, taking care of all the manpower who work with us to ensure that they are safe. If they are safe, we are safe, and so the community is safe. And third, the customer who is depending on all this delivery gets a full confirmed view that whatever delivery one is getting is risk-free.
Quickly, Chakradhar and Sajin can actually comment on that in terms of your preparation. Chakradhar.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Reggie. See, what we are doing, like I mentioned earlier, so at the production level, we are doing a few different things. At the last mile level, we are doing a few different things. So in the factories, what we have done is we have arranged accommodation for all the people working in the factory. We have arranged food arrangements for all the people working in the factory so that there is no movement of those people and they are fully taken care of. That is in addition to what they regularly make as employees. So that's in effect, quarantining the people who are very, very close to the product. And anyway, our production is highly automated. From a last mile point of view, we have made our own sanitization solution and used abundance of it because like basically it's ethyl alcohol plus distilled water. So we use ethyl alcohol for cleaning in production facilities. So we've used the same product, and if anyone wants to try solutions like this, it will be helpful for them. It's been a very effective solution. You use the simple spray equipment which you find at any salon or all these things, and you just you can overuse it, and sanitization solution will not be a problem. We have provided masks and gloves to everybody. We've moved our shifts from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. to ensure that in any given hour, there are not more than 20-25 people picking up the product. So in essence, you're splitting the problem further at every location. In addition to that, we have moved to a full contactless delivery. We've stopped even collecting money from our customers, and we have ensured that the product is left at their doorstep. So we are communicating very actively with customers. We are communicating very actively with delivery boys. Again, like Praharsh has said earlier, we are using the Arogya Setu app. We are taking screenshots, but we are finding ways to integrate it. We hope the government will release some API of sorts, which can, help us track risks better and work even further on this.
Sachin, excuse me, before you come in, Satyaki has to leave and for a next meeting, and he has to move into the other building. Sakti, I just want to ask a final question. In terms of the current crisis that you are going through and all of us go through, what is one of the biggest lessons that you are picking up? Of course, I also want to add a comment to what you already said about the digital strategy. I'm not taking the liberty of saying data is the new oil because the oil price is like below $1. So data, that may not be the right expression, but I think data mining, data intelligence, I think which Sachin, Praharsh, and Chandrika, Dilip, they are all would vouch for the importance of data. Just a final concluding thoughts on how would be the life after COVID-19, for example.
So I think Reggie, you're putting me in a spot in the sense that I think the new, life after COVID-19, I think is still about 18 to 24 months away because there needs to be a vaccine. And I think, we are going to really have to live with COVID-19 for the next, I would say, couple of years, and maybe even longer, depending on what happens and how many mutations, etc. there are. I'm not the medical expert. I think what we have to do as a nation is try and figure out, or even as a world, as a global community, is try and figure out how we are going to, what the normal is going to be. Already, I think, and I will say this, I think from a DGCA, MOCA, and from a regulatory agency perspective, we are seeing a lot of very, very interesting engagement in terms of how they believe various processes, protocols, procedures will have to work for us to go back to some degree of normalcy. And I'm sure, we are seeing it in the aviation industry. I think all of my colleagues on this panel will be seeing it in sort of industries and ministries that they're dealing with. I think the world will develop a model of working around or working with COVID. 9/11, I joined the aviation industry just as 9/11 happened. And that was 20 years ago. And, when 9/11 happened, everybody thought what was going to happen and how is this going to change. And we developed security policies and protocols to sort of deal with what we believe the challenges were. And we moved on. And I think similarly, we will develop policies, protocols, processes, and sort of ways of dealing with this to move forward. Because at the end of the day, I don't think travel, even if there's the next 6 to 12 months are going to be ugly for everybody. I don't think the need to travel and the need to sort of, and air travel is not going to disappear. I think we will find a way. And I think what that way forward is unknown, is nebulous at this point. And I think we will get there. We're already talking about it with the ministry and various proposals. But I think consumer confidence, I think what's happened in the last 3 months is that globally, consumer confidence has been eroded to an extent that's not been seen before. And I think normally, at least when SARS happened, when MERS happened, when various things happened, right, it was restricted to certain geographies in the world. And other geographies sort of continued and sort of kickstarted a recovery and things like that. I think in this case, the contraction has been so global, and you have no other news in the world, right? You pick up the newspaper, you pick up any news channel, and literally there's nothing else. And I think all of us, after a while, we will probably figure out, and this will happen at different scales and speeds in different countries, but fundamentally, I think economies will have to restart. The question is under what conditions and how quickly and in what stages will they restart. But the fact that they will have to restart and we will have to all go back to sort of living a reasonably normal life is unquestioned. And I think I don't have answers at this point. I think certainly data and digital is going to be a huge driver. E-commerce is going to be big. The way we live will change in some ways, but in other ways we will go back to sort of figuring out workarounds. And I think every industry will figure out their own sort of process and procedure that they'll have to do. Governments will also have to find ways of working with industries. So I think in many ways, the lessons that we've learned is that, you have to be resilient. You have to have enough cash to sustain operations for the next 12 to 24 months. I think that's going to be key. And that's going to determine, for instance, who survives and who doesn't. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, I think the good part is governments all over the world will sort of come in and work towards kickstarting their economies. And I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I think, we will emerge. We will emerge stronger, more resilient, and hopefully, all of us, the human race, will also. It's given people a time to pause and think about what they've been doing, what's important, how we need to sort of help each other. And I think there will be a lot of positive stuff that also comes out of this. And that's what I sort of believe. Maybe I'm being naive and overly optimistic, but I certainly think that all of us could do with a healthy dose of optimism on a daily basis. There's enough negativity going around.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be fine in the longer term.
Being resilient is the key word now. Thanks, Satyaki, for your time, and your observations have been really insightful for us. I think since you need to leave right now, we will continue the discussion with our other panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Surya and Reggie, and thank you to my fellow panelists, Chakradhar, Sachin, Praharsh, and I think Dilip. Thank you all so much. I learned a lot. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Take care, Satyaki.
Hey, thank you so much. We love your comment.
Sachin, quickly on to the previous question that I had asked, and I think then we will wind up with a couple of questions from the.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, being an organization, we are completely, as I've already mentioned, we are completely digital, faceless. We don't have any human on field. We are paperless, so no stationery is there. So, customer make own LR on their own. So, we are working. Everyone is working work from home. And for our partners, the truckers who are working with us, to them we have sent a message as and when a trucker will accept a shipment, a driver will get a vehicle is being assigned. So we have started sending language messages and a voice message so that he will hear that what precautions the driver need to take. As we are working in a B2B sector, so all the companies and the companies with whom we work are all MNCs or corporates. They have their standard operating processes. As and when the driver will come, they will give a hand sanitizer. They will take the temperature control. So from our side, we are just sending the messages and the voice messages so the driver and the trucker will hear that what steps he needs to take. Secondly, the insurance part. Since starting, we are completely digital, and we believe that all drivers in 365 rupees, a driver get an insurance of rupees 10 lakh, which is being launched by Ministry of Road Transport. So since then, all our drivers are being insured. So for COVID, we have not taken any special insurance. So all drivers which will come on our platform, our insurance policy will be issued on our behalf, and a driver and a truck owner both can access through their app the soft copy of that, because the biggest challenge is to maintaining the documents. So issuing and spending money is not the concern, but it has to be used when it is needed. So that's what we are already doing. Apart from that, we are not taking any other steps and maintaining any SOPs. So let's wait that government or the industry will come up some standard operating process for the logistic sectors, and we'll follow accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Sachin. We have a question from Vimal Srivastava. He's asking about what about the shortages in the last mile personnel, and are there any insurances that have been provided by the employers? Also, if this is the case, then it would also lead to escalation in cost of operations. So how are you all dealing with it? And are you all really providing insurance covers to your employees?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly take that and give my perspective on it. So all the there on ground working on behalf of us, and as Sachin mentioned, all of the people on the platform get covered using insurance. Of course, there are certain cost increases that happen, but we had insurance before this as well, and there is a nominal increase that has happened in the overall insurance rates once the whole COVID thing also happened. So that thing is of course there, but what the organization has also done is put together a large fund, taking contributions from within the team and within our central corpus. So in case there does end up a case which we're not able to resolve, or the person is facing challenges in claiming insurance, or if there is a case wherein any partner who's working on ground is not able to get access to essentials, not able to get access to basic necessities, or anyone in his or her family member who's struggling with any particular issue, that is the area we kind of take up using the fund that has been set up. of course, it is not just for the partners, it's also for the communities in and around them. So those two things are designed to take care of most of the cases that would come in. And the cost is something which as individuals, as companies, if we are able to take that cost, we are willing to take it. And I think it's not really a problem, and we'll find a way around it. So it's something, I think, as any socially responsible individual and company, you should be looking at. And of course, there has to be an element of people being able to do that as well. So that's what at least we've done. I'll allow my fellow panelists to mention any other aspects they might have taken up.
So, I mean, our take is very similar on this, and one is insurances for people, and two is providing sanitization to these people. But I think we are evolving into a new order of things, and I think safety and safety equipment would be 15 to 20% of your cost structure going forward, and it would be beneficial for all of us to sort of move into that direction, because if things don't work and if there are issues, you might not have a business to take care of as well, and it puts everyone at risk, including the customer, the fellow delivery partners, the employees. So risk mitigation is one of the things. Tech can help a lot. There are solutions of video monitoring which you can use to monitor temperature real time. You can start capturing data. The Arogya Setu helps a lot. You can build more monitoring tools, because again, remote working is the order of the day. So, build more remote working tools, build more visibility on what is happening in the ground through data as well as visual tools, and keep working on it. But, I think at least as a business, we are going to allocate, at least 10 to 20% of our cost structure within the last mile, purely for safety.
Dilip, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, for us, it's a more larger issue. We are the possibly only company who deals with 70% of our workforce on roll and maybe 30% off roll, which is the only flex that we have from an opportunity of outsourcing at a company view. So one, the health hygiene insurance is for everybody, be it an outsourced, be it an in-source employee. One is covered medically. Two, there are exigencies fund that we already have in case if somebody goes through some exigencies wherever in life, be it COVID, without COVID, the fund takes care of that. Three, I think since I mentioned that 70% plus people are our own role, lots of cost inputs we have taken. So, for example, April, we haven't done away with people while we have no business at this point of time. So, we have absorbed the cost. So you would know that e-commerce is all dried up beyond bit of an essential, which is possibly 2% of our business as usual volume. We're taking a huge losses to inbuild as to how do we see and can we factor it ahead when business comes to normal. And hence that's the hit that we are taking. Internally, we believe that as we move from here till say June, July, I think May, I'm not very sure personally that will situation be normal or not. Let's see as to post-third, is there an extension being proposed further, or do we resume to a new normalcy in bits and pieces? My view is that as we go into June, there could be a bit of a normalcy coming in terms of supply chain delivery. As we move into July, things could be, say, 90% normal, if I may term so. So from March onward, right, it has dried up from half of March. So April, May, June, I think the new norm of financial term, which I think we are translating internally, that is no longer a 12 months of a financial year, it's 15 months of a financial year. So that's construct one. 1 quarter of a losses that has already been embedded as to how do you factor that in next 12 months is an extended 15 months of the financial year. So these are some of the steps. One, taking care of the employee in the previous guidelines and some of the I mentioned earlier. Two, taking care of their medical needs and also protecting the job losses, which is the prior importance of the government notifications as well. And that by construction, 20% of the manpower that we hold on our role guarantees our manpower that they remain with us. 30% we are trying to variabilize still, not throw them out of the job. We're trying to see that how can we variabilize the structure to ensure that they are also into business and not thrown out. These are some of the steps that we are taking in hand internally to see how both of us sustain our people as well as us.
We have overshot our time. I think Reggie, can we take a couple of more questions now?
Just one more question. I think
Okay.
everybody has the next meeting lined up at 1
Right.
p.m. In terms of, there's also a question on the opportunities for on-the-spot contract laborers. For a lot of people have lost the job for some reason or other. But I think the logistics sector is the sector that would always look for delivery boys or delivery persons, and then of course people wanting to work in warehouses. Is there any way that you are looking for more employees on a short-term basis, where you can actually get these contract laborers with a minimum amount of training in your last mile deliveries or warehouse operations? Is it something that you're looking at? Do you find shortage of labor in the current scenario? This is also a question somebody has asked.
Right. So I think the biggest issue, like we discussed earlier, was in the first week of the whole lockdown, wherein there was a sudden displacement of a large set of people. I think since then, the number of people there working across facilities and doing last mile activity is just about what is needed to run a regular operations. But of course, so far as our clients are concerned, a lot of them are still getting back to their regular flows, because we must realize, even though the last mile capacity might be there, sometimes the warehouse capacity or the distribution center capacity, that is in a flux, which means that they're not passing through, so that the last mile can actually take care of it. I think moving forward, my expectation is that it is something which we will all need to solve. I think we can get people back. There are multiple. I think logistics, as Reggie mentioned, is one of those industries which will probably recover faster, which means that there might be a lot of vertical movement, and people who are not in the logistics might join logistics on a temporary basis. That's something which is already happening on ground. There are a lot of hotel industry executives who have wanted and shown interest in joining the platform on a temporary basis to support several of the activities that at least we're working on. So that's something that we're expecting. I think that should allow for most of the capacity imbalances to be sorted out. In regions wherein there is still imbalances, you of course have to work with improved communication, improved incentive, a little bit of freight cost hence increases in those particular areas. But when you manage people well, I think we've seen a lot of people slowly get back. And I think that is something we need to be dynamic on as well. Luckily for us, since we're a platform-based network, it's much more easier for us to make these changes for our last mile fleet so that they can get benefits. But so far as our physical facilities, wherein we do keep people on direct roles, etc., are also concerned, there we have explored certain options wherein we can get large number of people on a contractual basis on board flow. I guess the overall network has almost around 50,000 odd people. So I guess there's been a lot of movement in between categories and that I'm expecting would happen across the larger industries as well, where people from probably come in and work and support industries which are to react faster.
We need to quickly wind up with this session, so we'll take the final round of comments from each of you. As in, what have been your key learnings over this 1 month of lockdown? We'll start with Praharsh.
Chakradhar, I think he has.
Chakradhar, okay, he has to leave. Okay. Chakradhar?
Your mic is off.
I said I'm so sorry for having to drop. Thanks a lot, Reggie and Surya, for this opportunity. I've learned a lot from the panelists as well. The one key thing which at least I'm taking out from here is that there is a new normal and we have to adjust, figure out how to work with the new normal. And there are a number of ideas which all of us are following, would love to keep having and attending even events by you guys to learn more and to understand how we can improve ourselves and also contribute to forums like these. Thanks a lot again.
Thanks, Chakradhar, for your time.
Thanks, Chakradhar.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
See you.
Sachin, would you like to conclude?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So what I feel that being the leaders, we have to be agile to adopt the coming all opportunities and to encash in whatever the best way we can do it. So as Mr. Satki has also said that we all need to be very much optimistic, and we are seeing lot of opportunities, and logistic will be the one of the main key driving factor of across India and globe. So huge opportunities are being awaiting for us, and we see huge growth in coming days in months.
Thanks, Sachin. Prahash?
Yeah, I think overall thought currently is on a positive direction. I think logistics and supply chain, from an industry perspective, it will find a way, and so will all the other industries slowly. Of course, as Pratik mentioned a lot on consumer behavior and how that has changed on a short-term basis. I think any major change that happens, it's not 2-3 months. It takes usually a year or 2 years for it to reach a new normal, wherein people start becoming a bit more comfortable again. And I think that will take its own journey. But I think the good thing is, I do believe that we've seen a large part of whatever the worst could be. So anything from here is going to be on a way up. I think we've discussed quite a lot around it. I think we've been positively surprised and happy seeing the community, which is all kind of got together from your local communities, from NGOs to logistics companies, to actually support a lot of this, what is happening today. One thing I think we'll need to take ahead is that we need to be more empathetic towards everyone in and around, because people will be going through, if not directly through COVID, then indirectly through a lot of the ramifications that it would leave all of us with. So that is the key things we need to take up. And in order to serve the society a bit better, we have to be proactive and really fast, and especially industries which the rest of the industries depend on, such as logistics. It's the onus is on all of us to come together and really build something which creates or eases the paths to recovery in the coming year.
Right, Prahash, the onus lies on us. Dilip, your concluding comments?
Sure. I think first I'd like to thank everybody on the panel and yourself as well, including Reggie. It was a good opportunity for all of us to give our mindset. Having said so, on that conclusions, that's what I see. What has COVID brought in to us? I think it will open up a new opportunity in the way that we work. Say, for last around 30 days or 40 days now, all of us been working from home. So will work from home become a new norm? Possibly, yes. That's point one. Point two, the world is going through a change. So see at the positive side of it. I will not mention any negative. So let's look at the positive side of it to what has become new norm. The pollution at a global level in last 40 days would have defined a new path for itself. So it's a more cleaner hygiene environment. It's a more cleaner world than what we expected. Carbon footprint is all-time low. Your oil is getting available cheaper than water because there's no consumption. All right, so market will get reset. What will this bring in? Market will get reset. So would your dollar valuations be more expensive, lesser expensive? Let's leave that mathematics aside. And I think India has an opportunity from here, what COVID brings us to table, that we might see a large opportunity within India in terms of what we need to produce to what we need to service is an immense opportunity which will come forward. Two, I think as our personal habits, both at home front and workplace, will also get changed. So as we open up, would we go to mall or theaters more often than what we used to? I think everybody will take a pause and think about, okay, should I stay indoors and get into the habits which are now, or do I get into a crowd mixing, and are you sure about it? I think those thinking ability in ourselves itself will have a habitual change from here to next. And that will define, as we move ahead, as to new working norm, or to a new personal hygiene, health norm, to a new society norm. It will all emerge, and as I said, the business reset will define all these norms in itself as we proceed from here. And I look forward that this will be an exciting opportunity for a country like us, having the pandemic being started in China. It leaves us with a huge opportunity ahead. Maybe a short-term pain, but a long-term, for a very, very long time, we will gain out of it.
Thank you so much, Dilip, for your insights. And I think we'll have to close the session now. Thank you, everyone, for all your observations and your learnings in this part.